Hello everyone, and welcome to today's episode of 3 Flights. Today we're playing some IL-2 Great Battles, and we're going to be taking out, first things first, on the Wings of Liberty server, the BF-110 G-2, 2 SC-500s, 4 SC-50s, and we won't need all of our fuel. We haven't got that long to go. We're not flying all the way to England. Let's do... This is probably still overkill, but we can do, I don't know, 60. Let's do 60%. And that's really just so that we have enough to make it back if we get a big old fuel leak. Having a look at the mission, we're going to start at Melnitsa Airport, and we are going to fly east to attack the Trans Station at Kuchina. And then we are going to head north to cover off our own train station, just in case there's any IL-2s or ground attackers that are looking to blow up our objectives. So let's get on the ground. You might be curious about my getup today. Monday the 26th of January, an important date for all of us, by which I mean exclusively Australians, is Australia Day. And I do like Australia Day very much. Of course, I am Australian, but I don't live in Australian, so it is a bit of a reminder of home. IL-2, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, does have a modelled startup procedure of sorts. However, you really only press one button. It's interesting, though, because there is animations for all of the things, like switching on the magnetos. Wonder if we can see where the flywheel starter is. Usually it's a little T-shaped handle somewhere. Yeah, here it is. So lots of German aircraft have this kind of starter. I believe that you pull it out to start the inertial starter, and then you push it in to mesh the engine. As far as I'm aware, anyway. No special awards for figuring out what hand pumping means. That T-shaped handle. Oh, there you go. So it's pushed in to start the inertial starter, and then they'll pull it out to mesh the engine. If you own the... I think it's the FW190... I think it's both models of it. The Dora and the Anton actually both have a similar kind of starter. And the BF-109K4 definitely has one for sure. Somewhere by your left knee. And I don't know how they work. I'm a little bit coffee and haggard at the moment because, of course, celebrating Australia Day does involve suitable engagement with libations, as any decent Australian person will tell you. Though, as with many countries that have a colonial past, it does bring up some interesting discussions to be had. Interesting, that minimises the issue, but I'm struggling to think of a better word. About the relationship that Indigenous Australians have with contemporary Australians, which is to say, those not of native Australian descent. But of course, despite Australia being a young country, we are still dealing with generations and generations of Australians who have no real other identity other than being Australian. Of course, a lot of them were sent from one place or another, but with the many and varied backgrounds that people undertook as they made their way to Australia, a lot of them gave up their identities to come to Australia, particularly in the early 20th and late 19th century. Of course, there is the reputation of Australia being a prison island as well, and you can be pretty certain that when they were shipping criminals off to Australia, they weren't particularly taking extraordinary care to worry too much about things like keeping good track of their family lineage. Not only that, but lots of Australians and Australian families that came to settle in Australia, particularly in the early 20th century. And how crazy is this? But were required upon arrival to give up their previous nationalities. So after the war, opportunities were given to Europeans in war-torn parts of particularly Europe to resettle in Australia and work there, but this was done under the proviso that you would hand in your passport when you arrived and you would accept your new nationality and you'd become Australian. Which is to say that when Australia Day rolls around, it asks a lot of questions like, obviously, Australia itself is Aboriginal and native Indigenous land. They lived there for something like 40 to 60,000 relatively uninterrupted years. And then the relatively recent arrival of colonialism has had massive and extremely negative effects on their culture and population. But now we're kind of in the aftermath of the colonial period, which isn't to say that everything's fixed, but it is to say that we've inherited these problems as opposed to, hopefully, created them ourselves. But we do need to maintain an awareness. I do always try and act with the best intentions that I can when it comes to engaging with historically sensitive Indigenous issues. There's so much to learn, and for a great many people that experience is extremely painful. The effect that colonialisation had on certain parts of Australia, and if you're particularly interested in the horrifying specifics of history, then you do well to see what exactly happened to the native Indigenous Australian population of Tasmania, which is that small little island that juts off the bottom of Australia. So every time January 26 rolls around and the celebration of Australia Day is associated with the arrival of the First Fleet with the infamous Captain Cook, who I'm pretty sure was beaten to death by Hawaiians at some stage, and always is a hotbed of political debate. With everything that's going on in the world at the moment as well, lots of people seek to latch on to moments like these for one reason or another and engage with them inauthentically in order to generate, it's tricky to say, hate, animosity, engagement. There's a million different reasons. My gunner would have said something if that 666 command in the chat was for me, but let's just double check something here. Everything's sounding good and looking good. Perfect. Yeah. Though if you are from different parts of the world that have unique histories, do you celebrate a national day? I know that our Americans have their Independence Day, the Canadians have Canada Day. Though with the current political climate as it is, it feels like celebrating nationalism is a very... it's tricky to do, for lack of a better word. Just because pride and enthusiasm for your own country is something that's been misappropriated by so many bad actors. But I don't think that's a reason to avoid engaging with enthusiasm for your own country. I think everyone has a right to love where they're from, to love their country. It's your home. And to quote that song, I still call Australia home. I've been to cities that never close down. From New York to Rome to old London town. But no matter how far, nor how wide I roam, I still call Australia home. Looks like the vast majority of this train station's already been destroyed. It looks like there's a small cluster of buildings just on the southern edge here with a crane or something like that. So let's drop an SC-500 on that. 500 kilogram bombs on our belly, and then 4 SC-50s. I want to do some learning about the SC-50 at some stage, just because the Germans mounted it on almost everything. The F-109s, 110s, 111s, Junkers 88s, the Bombays specifically carried a large number. That's a good hit. Carried along a large number in their Bombays of SC-50s. And of course, the German bombs are measured in kilograms as opposed to pounds. So the SC-50 is kind of like the equivalent of a 100-pound bomb. I'm fudging the numbers pretty heavily here, but there must have been something to it. I wonder what the real effectiveness of that weapon was, because they lent very heavily into it. My mental image of the Blitz and events like that, I remember reading in books about the Blitz that residents of London, I think they would listen for the sticks. They referred to them as sticks of bombs or collections of bombs, and they would count them as they exploded because they were expecting to hear 8. And if there's 8 coming from a Heinkel 111, I believe that means that it's likely SC-250s that are being dropped, because the Heinkel 111 carries about 8 SC-250s in those very interesting upside-down bomb bays. You'll see it in historical footage of the HE-111 of when they drop their bombs, the SC-250s and other bombs that come from the internal bomb bay drop upside down and then flip around in the air. For which I'm sure there's an extremely good reason, but I don't want to question the... Oh shit. We've got someone. I don't want to question the logic of the Heinkel Corporation, but I am interested as to why. Our gunner has just told us that there's someone getting spicy, so we'll... 1, 2, 3, 4... Not our finest moment. And that is bad news. Oh. Just the oxygen system. Oh no. We might have to see if we can run from this. The BF-110 is an airframe. I love this plane. It's one of my favorites. Even though its history is not necessarily steeped in enormous glory, or at least it doesn't quite get the respect that it deserves. As lots of people were very dismissive of the heavy fighter concept, and fair enough, the heavy fighter concept didn't necessarily meet all of the requirements and expectations, but they were onto something. And of course, we have the 110s in their ongoing history of night fighting, their performance during the Battle of Britain. Oh, fuck. Is my gunner dead? Why is he not reacting? Oh, he is dead. That's worse. Brother, I am leaking like a sieve here. Okay, he's overshot, but he's in something much more capable than we are. Let's see if we can maybe get a little bit of flap out here, just so we can close our turn. Nothing. Okay. This is a G-2, so it doesn't have that funky system that the E-2 in IL-2 has, where the guy in the back seat can cut across. There we go. Where the guy in the back seat can reload the cannons. Instead, they're rearmed from belts, or rather, they're one continuous belt in the back. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh boy. Okay, okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get home. Let's get home. Oh no, that's even worse. Okay. Okay, this immediately got more difficult. Okay, thank you, second engine. You did your job as best you could. I'm gonna have to try and get some rudder to stabilize this. But we have so far to go. We may end up in some kind of forest here. Our first engine's totally overheating. So we'll just blast open the radiators and try and get some altitude here. Let's pull the flaps in just in case they're uneven. I suspect we've leaked out almost all of our fluids. And our speed is not doing great. I don't know if you can feather the prop on the right engine. If you can, then then I don't know how. But we're comfortably over friendly lines, so if we do have to ditch, then we will if we can. Or even bail out if we're high enough up. I feel like Luke Skywalker in his snowspeeder. Dak? Dak, can you hear me, buddy? Wedge, I've lost Dak. You're gonna have to take the next pass. Activate harpoon. Great shot, Jensen. One more pass. I think anyone who played any of the Star Wars Rogue Squadron games or any of them like that, and they had the Snowspeeder mission, man, did they get a lot of use out of one more pass. I feel like every Star Wars game uses the just one more pass line, even if you don't have just one more pass to go. Okay, our fuel is not very much. Our engine is melting. Our gunner is dead. And our engine is winding back. I'm not going to make it over this field, I think. Let's pull back and set up for a off-field landing here. I'm already going way slow, so... Yep. There goes engine 2. Oh, please just clear these trees. Oh, I'm not going to. I'm going to die. No! I misjudged it! Ah, come on! Alright guys, welcome back in for flight number 2. The map restarted, which unfortunately stuck a spanner in the works for my plans for flying for the Germans, because now the Allies are underrepresented and they need some help. I'm putting a clipped wing and 150 grade fuel on this Spitfire, and we need to get off the ground fast at 65% fuel, as our airfields are very actively under attack. We'll start our engines if we can, but this place is absolutely crawling. I'll be lucky if one of these Bofors don't explode me. In fact, I don't know if this is the Bofors or whether it's one of the German domestic version, rather the Russian domestic versions. Words cannot express how many separate attempts it has taken me to fly this second sortie. A variety of technical problems have gotten in the way, but we're turning over the engines now. That being said, I suspect that this FW190 is about to kill us. Oh, okay. It's not an FW190, it's a BF109. He did take a flak hit, so maybe that'll discourage him from having another go. Okay, we want 12 boost, and we want throttle, close the canopy. And while we gain a little bit of speed and altitude here, let's just keep ourselves away from the gun sights of this. Oh, fuck. This BF109, this might be the shortest flight that we've had yet. All I can do is hang around the anti-aircraft guns as close as I can. Looks like this guy's dipped down for a go. We're going gate. Lent on the trigger there because I'm going so hard on the stick. If we can take just one with us, that'll be a good outcome. Very sorely missing that right aileron at the moment. This makes my plane handle not good. This is pretty long range. Oh, fuck. This is pretty long range shooting for a Spitfire. Let's get out. No! Oh, of course. Oh. Oh, no. Oh, but I made it. Oh, I got out. I got out. What a hero. Maybe get away from the burning airplane, though I would be sitting on the ground in a similar fashion after that flight. Oh, no. Oh, no. Well, better luck next time. Let's see you guys for flight number 3. You've been giving us a chance. We're on flight number 3, and flight number 2 only lasted 3 minutes. Oh, no. We've spawned at a much more northernmost airfield here, not at Altenstadt. Most people have seen that things are going pretty horribly wrong at Altenstadt Airport and are now taking off from Ettinghausen. We're going to run over there as quick as we can and see if we can help out in some way. We're in the same kind of Spitfire. Yes, the UI... Ooh, whoopsies. The UI in IL-2 Great Battles is definitely one of the best. Here's a fine example of just simply how massive the Jug is, just for the record. Absolutely monstrous aircraft, even dwarfing that IL-2 in the background. A lot of people are hanging out and waiting for VR support as well. For a lot of people, VR support is a complete make or break when it comes to trying out and flying in new flight simulators. So if anyone's got an extremely good computer and an extremely expensive VR setup and would like to invite me over to their house, that would be nice. So I can finally see what the hype is about. I can remember my first flight in VR very vividly. It was shortly after I first got my headset, and I was flying on the Persian Gulf in DCS, and I was flying around the Burj Khalifa, and I was having a grand old time, and I was like, wow, it's like I'm really flying through all of these buildings. This is crazy. And I did that for about 20 minutes, and then took my headset off. The eye cups surrounding my eyes had gotten so incredibly sweaty and gross that I felt like I had to wash afterwards. And I had a headache that wouldn't go away for hours. Though I did have one friend explain to me that they've got a trick, or at least they've managed to desensitize themselves from VR sickness, and that was by playing a lot of VR chat and gradually getting more and more used to having the headset on. But of course I just love track IR, and I have flown on flat screen for such a long time. People are stubborn in their ways and in their budgets. I think I could probably run a slightly better VR setup than the one that I have now, but they are so expensive. I am enthusiastic to see what the Steam frame gives us later on. That might be a ways off yet. Our factory at 3272, all the way down south here, so we're going to be heading south. Let's get up to... Is this cloud base at a reachable altitude? I can't really tell how high the clouds are. Either way, we'll climb up to around about cloud base. This machine is fast, just for the record. Most Spitfires in their combat mode have about 30 minutes of boost, if not an hour. Let's make sure I'm not... There we go. International power, 1 hour. 1 hour of combat mode. So, we're not running the risk of kicking anything here. We have my favourite fuel tank gauge. Though, if you watch the film Dunkirk, you will see the scenes where he repeatedly checks the fuel gauge by pressing the button down here to show how much fuel is in the tank. But he specifically says, "You're at 70 gallons." Which confuses me. Maybe there is a way to tell, but to the best of my understanding, there's not really any way of telling how much fuel you have above 37 gallons, because as you can see on this label, bottom tank only. The top tank is not gauged and contains 48 gallons. At takeoff, keep cock normally open. Okay. Freaky fuel gauge. Yes, he's like, "You're at 40 gallons. I'm like, no, he's not. You don't know that. My other pet peeve is, "We're staying at 500 feet to leave fuel for 40 minutes fighting time over Dunkirk." Bro, if you want to save fuel, why are you flying at 500 feet? You're going to be using the most fuel down there. What were you thinking, Fortis leader? Cliffs of Dover has wonderful, wonderful versions of the Spitfire Mark 1 and the Spitfire Mark 2, which are the Spitfires that, unlike these gorgeous Spano and 50 cal equipped ones, are instead well equipped with 303 machine guns. And the simulation of ammunition in Cliffs of Dover is just fantastic to me. You can customize the belts of ammunition in every single one of the guns that you have on your plane. Which does mean that if you're flying the Hurricane Mark II, the one that has 12 303 machine guns, you can replace every single round in every single belt with an incendiary tracer, which, close to the initial release of the game, would severely lag your game to have all 12 guns firing tracer rounds one after the other. And it would just hose them. But one of the soft factors that I just love Cliffs of Dover for is its simulation of the effects of damage that weapons had at the time. You're dealing with aircraft like the Bf-109 E03 and the Spitfire Mark II and Mark I. So the E3 actually has the advantage there because it's got the 20mm wing cannons, but they only come with a paltry 60 rounds each, and then you must resort to using the twin 7.7 machine guns in the nose, which, if you're out of cannon fire, taking anything down with those pea shooters is extremely difficult. Whereas if you're flying in the Allies at that period of the war with 303 machine guns, it's almost like death by 1,000 cuts, in that you can get good bursts onto the enemy, but just by sheer luck and chance, they might not hit anything important. You don't really often think of time to kill in a flight simulator because it's not really a concept that applies. Time to kill is an FPS term, but it does kind of exist. With aircraft from the Korean War period and onwards, the time to kill had reached a point of almost being instant. The heaviness of ammunition and the amount of gunfire being put down range just meant that any successful impact would completely and instantly destroy an aircraft. But when you're dealing with earlier war stuff like 1940 and 1941, lots of people with machine guns and stuff, the ability to absorb damage does come into play a little bit more. I love two damaged aeroplanes fighting each other, because then it becomes a real test of who can adjust and modify their behaviour to be able to compensate for whatever's wrong with their airframes. Back when we would play Cliffs of Dover multiplayer events many years ago for me, but it's something I desperately want to get back into. We would often consider a BF-109 to be dead once we saw white smoke venting out of the radiator. One of the best and most effective ways of, in air quotes, killing a BF-109 with the 303s was to perforate its radiator. Because if you were flying over England, which you almost always are in Cliffs of Dover campaigns, any form of radiator perforation in a BF-109 is quite likely going to mean that they run out of cooling and their engine seizes before they make it back across the channel. So if you were in a dogfight with someone and you perforated their radiator, they would almost instantly start turning back south and making a beeline back to France or elsewhere, just looking to make it back home safe before their engine quit. Not 100% sure if this is a good guy or a bad guy. His wing shape makes me think it's Russian, so... But we have two here, so if one of them shoots at the other, we'll know who's who. Actually, this may be an FW. What are you, my friend? What are you? You're green, you're Soviet, right? Right. Soviet aircraft. I've never been good at diagnosing what you are. What are you? A yak? They all look the same to me. What's the difference between a Yak 1 and a Yak 7? There's a whole 6 yaks between them, but I can't tell them apart. Even from the inside, the only telling feature seems to be that the armored glass on the front panel is thicker. Maybe later on in the week I'll fly some Russian aircraft just so we can have a look at some of the peculiarities of their cockpit. The IL-2 I always associate with its front cockpit glass being made out of great big slabs of bulletproof glass that were kind of placed together like bricks in a wall, as opposed to being one solid large piece of glass. Maybe to have them be easier to replace if they get cracked from ground fire, so that you don't have to replace one whole massive pane of glass. Or maybe they just couldn't manufacture glass, bulletproof glass in that density and size in one solid piece. So I think bulletproof glass is usually sheets of laminate. Other aircraft like the certain versions of the LA5 have a borderline hysterical amount of bulletproof glass at the front cockpit. It hangs onto the front of the cockpit like just a great big brick slab, and is almost comical in its thickness. It reminds me of back in 90s comedies, if they had to establish someone was a nerd, they'd give them the thickest glasses imaginable. Now there's a concept. How about prescription canopies for aircraft? Get the front glass of your Spitfire made up to your prescription, means that no one else can fly your plane. I'm very lucky though to not need glasses, or at least I don't think I need glasses. My gameplay may demonstrate otherwise, but last time I got tested, which was reasonably recently, I haven't needed them, so I'm not entirely sure with the process of prescriptions and how they work. All I know is that the lenses cost one price, but they get you on the frames. It's the frames that cost so much. Of course, I had the entire sunglasses industry blown apart for me when one of my friends started working at one of those sunglasses stands that you see in the center of a shopping center or a mall, and revealed to me the deep dark secret that almost all sunglasses in the world, from Ray-Ban to whatever else, are almost entirely manufactured and distributed by one brand called Luxottica. And the only reason they cost so much is because people will pay that much, and that you can get cheap sunglasses that are just as good. If I do go back to Australia this year, which is something I'd quite like to do, I'm definitely going to have to go get myself a pair of gas station sunglasses. In Australia, they're called Speed Dealer Sunnies. Because who doesn't like a nice pair of gas station sunglasses? You know, the ones that have the kind of orangey, purpley, reflective film on the front of them, so that you can kind of get this sci-fi look. It's even better, even better if our airfield's under attack. It's even better if the lens of the sunglasses is uninterrupted between the nose, so that the entire sunglasses glass goes from one eyeball to the other eyeball across the bridge of the nose, like ski goggles. But I do think that wearing those sunglasses does give you stat buffs to doing yard work. I think that if you've got the sunglasses that have the reflection on them that's kind of orangey purpley, and you bought them at a gas station, and you, even better, have the glass connect over the bridge of the nose, then I think that gives you like a +5 bonus to mowing lawns, and like a +3 on any skill checks related to landscaping. It also automatically qualifies you to drive an excavator and a bulldozer, should you so desire. There's got to be one piece of road working equipment that is much more fun to use than all the others, and the guys must have fights over which one gets to use it. I was thinking that maybe one of the most chill jobs is probably driving the roller. We call it a steamroller, even though it hasn't been operated on steam for a long time. Steamroller looks good, excavator looks like good fun, but I feel like if you're driving an excavator, you probably have to lock in. I wouldn't mind one of those excavators that has the rock breaking tip on it, because then you don't have to pick things up with a bucket. You just have to casually keep poking rocks with your rock poker, going dooga 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 dooga. One of our ships done got sunk, but all of these attack aircraft are slipping my attention. Working on one of those cranes that's really, really, really tall, big construction cranes that you get on, you know, inner city construction sites, that's probably cool. But I'm sure that the view and the novelty of it all probably wears off in the first half of the first day, at which point you then have to work in a small glass box suspended above the entire city for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Imagine if you forgot your water bottle. Nightmare scenario. And I'm guessing they don't have bathrooms up there. Just curious about what's attacking all this stuff. I'm keeping my eyes peeled, which is a horrifying statement. That one's down too. Keeping my eyes peeled, whereas the mental image of an eye being peeled is not good. I see something, but it does look kind of friend-shaped, and the ships aren't shooting at it. That's not friend-shaped, that's a BF-110. Okay. Now the shoe is on the other foot. The trick, of course, is going to be not dying. Careful of the tail gunner, he's got twin 7.7s in this era, which can be enough to perforate your stuff. Okay, we've got a teammate coming in first. We'll cover him on his attack. Looks like the 110's turning hard, though. He's taking some shots. Okay, we'll take over from here. Good hits, but he's not going down. Just have to keep an eye out for any other Jerry, what comes around this area. Easy to lose them in the trees, but I've got my eye on him. Only 50 cal hits on the right wing. Maybe German. Nope, it's an allied aircraft, but careful of the 110, he's coming around. Try to get me the same way I got that guy. Ooh, we've got some smoke coming out of the right wing now. Like a pack of hungry wolves, we circle, seeking revenge. You camped my airfield, and you expect to get away from it? Looks like his gunner is dead. Hits all along his tail. Oh, careful, 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 careful. Alright. I'm surprised that didn't sever his control surfaces. My deflection shooting needs a lot of work. If anyone has any hot tips on good practice for deflection shooting, I'd love to know it. Because I've never quite managed to find a way to practice that I really agreed with. And as you can see there, the terrible, terrible habit of jerking the stick while I'm setting up for the flight. Setting up for the attack. And no jokes about jerking my stick, okay? Situational awareness 0, 100% target fixation. And that is a departure from flight? How are you still flying? I shot your tail off. I'm gonna run out of Hispano ammo. Come on, my friend. Okay. Do you think he got the hint? There we go. Actually took a couple of hits there. Looks like it's on the leading edge of the... Oh. I was wondering why it got colder in here. Whenever I put the throttle to 100 and the D9 emergency power does not activate, you need to bind wet. How are we going for fuel? 20 gallons. We can stick around for a little bit. We've still got 50 caliber ammo. And maybe a couple of Hispano rounds left to go. Having a crack in your cockpit in this weather's going to be a little bit miserable, though. Where are we? Hey. Looks like there's been more attacks on our shipping and some puffs of smoke around there as well. I think there's another bandit. I have friends that play IL-2 Great Battles, and it's as if they've got some kind of inbuilt mental radar or some phenomenal gyroscope of situational awareness that just means that they can somehow always know exactly when to pull the trigger and only for how long. There's a content creator friend of mine, Karaya, who I'll put in the link down below, who just is magnificent when it comes to... Oh, it's a friendly attacking their landing barges, of course. Just magnificent when it comes to gun accuracy. I've never really met anyone quite so capable. Enemy tanks and vehicles destroyed. That's what we like to see. That guy looks kind of friend-shaped, but it's Russian, so I don't know what kind. We'll just see if anyone decides to ruin the day of this IL-2. Yeah. Just blew up another boat. Good hits, good hits. Dropped another bomb. Oh, that one was just a touch too long. You ready for the most obvious statement in the entire world? One of the most enjoyable planes to fly in IL-2 Sturmovik is the IL-2 Sturmovik in its many and very different versions. I hope that the IL-10 in IL-2 Korea... Oh my goodness, what an incredibly confusing statement. I hope that the IL-10 in IL-2 has an equally cool assortment of weapons like the Patab bomblets that you can carry. Though it is a bit of a shame that there is no physical simulation. The Patab, I think they're 2.5 kilogram, maybe less, explosives are kind of like an early version of a cluster bomb that is instead the bomb bay is just filled with many small bomblets. And the way that it's simulated in IL-2 is that you drop these bomblets over a zone, and it just rolls a semi-random chance of exploding whatever target is underneath you when you release them. I don't think there's much of a graphical effect to it. One of my favourite weapons in DCS is, of course, the CBU-105, because it never really does get old watching that those submunitions burst out and spin around in the air. That also looks friend-shaped, but tricky to say. That IL-2 is still doing... I was going to say the Lord's work, but I'm not sure the VVS would agree. Looks like he might be RTB now that he's out of Spicy Boys. Oh no, he's still going for it. What a hero. Unfathomable how many IL-2s were built during the war. Especially considering that none still exist. Well, not none. There are a few. I don't know how the New Zealanders continue to take possession of virtually every aeroplane ever invented, but somehow I'm sure there's people in New Zealand that have FW-190s and BF-109s, and I think Peter Jackson, the guy who directed the Lord of the Rings films, I think he's got a collection of World War I biplanes. Which is pretty sick. If you make your millions directing a fantastic rendition of Lord of the Rings, and then you take that money and buy a bunch of World War I era aircraft, perfectly legitimate use of money, I think. In fact, I'd encourage it. We've got a thingy down there. It's scooting along from left to right. Not entirely sure how those massive ships got into this very small river, but I won't ask too many questions. It would be nice to have some of the flight simulations that are coming out, like Combat Pilot, that will have a relatively intense focus on maritime operations, I can only assume. For there to be some kind of depiction or simulation of the kinds of soft effects that something like the 50 caliber machine guns of an aircraft might have on a ship, you know. You're not going to sink a Japanese merchant vessel with 50 cal machine guns, but I'm certain you could do horrific damage, and I'm sure they did. And then other effects, like being able to degrade the anti-aircraft fire coming from a hostile ship by strafing the anti-aircraft mounts on it. I know that was what, is it the PBJ? And the B-25s that were modified for Pacific theater operations. They had so many machine guns in the front because they would fly towards a ship and just be hosing it down with machine gun fire in order to suppress the anti-aircraft gunners so that they can drop their bombs. And a bunch of other things that I'd love to see, like skip bombing. Skip bombing's a personal favourite just because it's probably, from a simulation perspective, one of the most enjoyable ways to inflict violence against a boat, the natural enemy of the aeroplane. Unless we're landing on them, of course. Or we need rescuing by them, of course. Or we need fuel, of course. Or we need spare parts, of course. Or we need the aircraft themselves, of course. But other than that, what have boats ever done for us? Vauxhall's got its naval update coming out, which is bittersweet because unfortunately the planes that are coming for it seem like they're going to be gated behind some quite difficult construction, research, building capacities, which is what makes the game what it is, for sure, but you know, like joining a clan. I just want to be a part of an air battle in a ongoing MMO-ish sort of war. I don't want to... Is that a German? I don't want to have to, like, go and fill out a form about how I'll be the most loyal member of the 420th Warden Builders and Fixers faction. But maybe I'm just being a baby. To the people who earned them go the rewards, I guess would be the point. But if any of you watching are the leader of an incredibly powerful faction of players within the Foxhole universe, and you feel like giving me a bunch of planes for no reason, I'd gladly welcome it. I haven't decided which of the factions has the designs I like. The collies are my typical favourites when it comes to aesthetic choices, but I've got to admit, some of the Warden planes look really cool. Though the Colonial's getting an aircraft carrier and the Warden's getting a seaplane tender is probably one of the most bittersweet things I've ever seen. This guy appears to be going straight for our airfield. I don't think he knows that I'm behind him. But from that pass that he just did, he looked a lot like an FW-190, so we'll see what happens, and the worst case scenario is that I will be 2/3 of the way back to base to land. Need to go grocery shopping today with the objective of gaining access to potatoes. I've been to all of my local corner shops, and for some reason none of them have potatoes at the moment. And of course this perfectly coincides with my intense desire to make hash browns for the first time in my life, which I've never done before, but doesn't seem like the hardest thing in the world. I've been moving on up in terms of recipes and can create a quite excellent beef bourguignon, if I do say so myself. Oh. Ah. That went faster than I expected. Okay. Maybe keeping your engine in combat mode for an entire hour might potentially negatively affect its capacity to keep running when it runs out of fuel. This time, let's see if I can not kill myself on bailing and recover the airframe. Damn, and you can see the airfield over there. Oh, man. Here's a holdover from the roleplay flights, by the way. This replaces the in-game photograph that's usually of your sweetheart with delicious statistics and engine mode settings, eco, saunter, liner, buster, gates. So you'll hear from your commander. All duty, go, buster, buster, go. And then you set your engine settings accordingly. I mean, if I land this on a straight enough piece of road, someone can just come out with a bottle of kerosene and I can take right back off again. Either that or a tow truck. Though I have played Workers and Resources, and I don't think in 1942 the Russians have access to a particularly good tow truck, so maybe I'll take the kerosene. In fact, if I'm close enough to a village, I'm sure that if I could get a few bottles of vodka together, we could probably get enough ethanol to get me airborne again. I only need to go about 2 miles to make it back. That BF-109 gunner is going to posthumously be awarded a kill as I land gently on the road here. Oh man, I love flying warbirds so much. I just can't get enough of it. It's so scrappy compared to flying fighter jets. And hey, look. Couple of bullet holes, but otherwise we're fine. And the plane's fine too. I just need someone to bring me some fuel. So I think I'm going to hop out here. So that's today's 3 flights, everyone. I hope you had a lot of good fun. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you for all of your feedback and responses so far. I've been absolutely loving it all. And I look forward to seeing you for another episode of 3 Flights on Thursday. And on Wednesday, we are going to be streaming at my usual time. That'll be 1600 Zulu time on my Twitch channel. Links down below. Thank you everyone for your company, and I will see you later. Good luck. Bye. Oh, and happy Australia Day.